Hi, everyone, and thanks so much for joining me here at the eShip show at BMCC. I'm excited to have you on board for this conversation with entrepreneurs all around the world. We're talking with different ones who are focused in different industries. And today we're going to be talking about making tech and tech programming in particular super accessible. So anyone, you don't have to be a techie to do programming thanks to what's been come up with, thanks to the Bubble, or Bubble as they call themselves. We're going to be talking with Emmanuel, who's one of the co-founders of the organization. I'm excited to have him on board as a techie myself, someone who's worked in that space for many years. I always like making technology as accessible as possible, and I think that's what this web show is going to do for you today. We're going to talk about how he started his company, ways and things that came up that made them change their plans. And we'll go through a whole journey with Emmanuel in the half hour that we have with them. Send your questions to me in social media if you do have them. I love getting to those live questions. I know a lot of the students who would normally be watching the show are actually studying for finals right now. At least I hope they are. And it's exciting to have everyone on board today. So Emmanuel Straschnov is our guest today. He's the co-founder of an organization called Bubble. And Bubble is a platform online. You just go to the website and you're able to build an app in a matter of an hour. You can create an app even sooner. There are some really quick and easy ways to build apps inside their platform. And so we're going to be talking with Emmanuel about what that looks like. For now, Emmanuel, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And Emmanuel, I noticed that you have a strange accent. What is that accent that you have?
It's a French one, I'm afraid. I'm trying to lose it, but that's obviously not working.
What part of France are you from?
I grew up in Normandy, but did most of my college experience in France. However, I left France 12 years ago now, so it's been a while.
Oh, wow. So you're almost a native New Yorker, right?
I've been in New York for 5 years, basically for the life of the company.
Oh, that's great. That's really good. So one of the questions that my students always ask is, when you first started, what was your brainchild? What was the spark that sort of brought you together with your co-founder?
It's actually a good question because we had a very special start in a sense that we only met once before deciding to partner on this company. So Bubble is actually not my initial project. It's Josh. Joshua is my co-founder. It's his project, and it started like maybe 4 months before I joined him. So I was at Harvard graduating from my MBA, and some mutual friends put us in touch. And he started this by himself, which was a little bit crazy because it's a very ambitious, making programming easy is a big project. And it's crazy for 2 guys to do it. Now we have people with us, but it was even crazier for 1 person, right? And so he was looking for a co-founder to join him. And so someone put us in touch. To be actually honest, I hadn't think of starting a company at the time. As a foreigner, when you graduate from school, the visa situation, for instance, is not necessarily the easiest thing to start a company.
Right.
And so I was more looking to join a company. And so what happened is I actually had a job offer from a company, a startup in New York. And then I met Josh. I went to this coffee and I said, well, great meeting you. I have this job. I'm going to take it. They're taking care of my immigration, green card and everything. But maybe we'll do something in a few years. It's always nice to meet smart people. And then we started talking about Bubble, about life in general, and then Bubble in particular. And it actually lasted like more than 3 hours. Like we had a very long conversation. And at the end of the coffee, he said, you know what? You want to give it a try? And then I told him, like, let me sleep on it. I did my due diligence on him a little bit. So I called the people that put us in touch basically that night after the coffee and say, hey, who is this guy? How is it going to be to work with him? And then following day, I said, okay, I'm in. And that was it.
Wow. So that it really can happen that quickly. And I always remind my students of that. Some of my best ventures and some of my best collaborations have happened in very random ways. Like you just don't know what's next.
Yeah, it's really like about a gut feeling. Feeling like, trust is a very important thing when you start a company. And obviously, I can't say that I trusted him because I didn't know him, right? But it felt that I could trust him. And then when I talked to a few people, they would say the same thing. So I was like, okay, that sounds about right.
That's excellent. So do you know what's the story then of how he got the idea?
So Josh got the idea. So he's always been technical, but has actually never worked at a tech company per se. So he did philosophy in college, not computer science, and then he worked at Bridgewater, the hedge fund, for a few years. And while there, he was not programming, but he was managing a lot of, as a product manager, basically managing a lot of the technical projects. And because he was technical, at some point he built something because he felt like it was very stupid to see people repeating the same thing again and again. And so he hacked by himself something to empower other employees at Bridgewater to build something pretty quickly. And so seeing that, he actually found that very rewarding. And he was like, well, maybe there is a way to do that at a larger scale for what you would call general purpose programming, which is really what we're doing, like making like a general purpose app or website. And so he started doing that. And so he quit his job. And then at the same time, he was in New York. That was, about late 2011, early 2012. Everybody was literally looking for a co-founder, like a tech co-founder. So everybody was asking him, hey, can you be my tech co-founder? And then he was, the combination of having everyone asking this question and his experience at Bridgewater was like, wait, people can't just be asking everyone to be the tech co-founder. There has to be a way without a tech co-founder. And so that's how basically the initial idea started.
That's great. And
so in some ways, people say you need to solve your own problem, right? When you start a company, obviously a technical person doesn't need Bubble at first, right? Because he knows how to code. However, his problem was that everybody was asking him to help, and he couldn't help everyone. So he was like, let's find a way to help more people at once, and that became Bubble.
Oh my God! And my students have exactly the same challenge. They have these ideas for companies and organizations and tech and apps, and they want a co-founder. They're looking for a technical co-founder, and it is an important piece to get into place. But I think sometimes it holds up them ever seeing whether their idea can be viable with whoever they're trying to approach. So is that sort of a niche that you're really looking to meet?
So yeah, well, it was the initial niche for a few reasons. So firstly, because there was a huge need there. The need is not necessarily big in terms of number of people. Like not everyone wants to start a business, but these are people that are very willing to try something, pretty much willing to try anything, because if you don't have funding, it's very hard to find a way. And let's be honest, everybody tell you you can learn how to code. I doubt that you'll actually be able, after a few boot camps or a few hundred of hours on some websites to learn how to code, to be able to run something in production. If your server goes down at 2 a.m., I'm not sure those boot camps will be particularly useful, to be honest. You need years of experience.
Exactly.
So that was the early market when we went forward, because it was just easier to convince people to use a product like ours that was honestly very limited at first. We got our first paying customers in December 2012, so only less than a year after we started. And really, at that time, the product was not doing too much. It was very slow, buggy, not very pretty, but people were still paying because they had no other option to start the company. Now, today, we've changed that a little bit, in a sense. Like, we still want to, most startups, my goal is to get any startup to start on Bubble, because I think it's a much more efficient way to do it. It's cheaper, and also you can iterate on the product much faster. And I think it's a waste to put hundreds of thousands of dollars in building a tech solution while you could use something like Bubble that is free. I think that money would be better used somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. Now, we're also starting to see another use case, which is really, to me, the long-term vision, is a lot of established businesses, like not necessarily startups, are just using us to build a software solution, whether it's internal apps or external-facing apps. So we have a lot of small businesses actually using us right now, that instead of paying $50,000 a local development shop to build, I don't know, like, an invoicing system or something, they just build that themselves. And so the great thing for them then is that the product will evolve with them as they need. It's very much like an Excel sheet. When you have an Excel sheet as a small business for your budget, and you make a big change in your business, you're going to adjust the budget. The problem with software done today is that you can't evolve that software very quickly, and that's how we see all those businesses having very old legacy software that sometimes break. The vision with Bubble is that they can evolve that exactly as they will be using Excel.
Sure. And I like that explanation, because it lets the students know, and other people who are entrepreneurs who are watching this, that really the threshold for people to start a tech, an app-based business is much lower than it was even a few years ago.
Right.
Like you were saying, 2012, the whole challenge was this was a solution that people had, and it wasn't particularly elegant solution, but it was the only thing that was available. And now you have the elegant solution, and it's a great space for students to get started.
Yep.
What do you attribute to your success so far? You know, if you could boil it down to 2 or 3 things.
Having bootstrapping the business all the way is something I'm actually very proud of, which was not easy at first, but now we've reached, about 120,000 users, and 120,000 users. Our website's apps built on Bubble hit more than 12 million page views every month, and we've been able to do that without external funding. That's actually something I take a lot of pride of. The other thing is a community. Like, we have an extremely active community, which started it was basically the people that wanted to get into tech but really couldn't because they didn't have the skill. And so we managed to create that movement that if you go to our forum, you'll see we have an extraordinary active forum, like more than 150 posts every day, like people helping each other. That's something that I find very rewarding. Yeah. And then the last thing is we've actually seen businesses grow on us, and this is very cool. There is this company in Paris, for instance, that just raised a little bit more than $2 million seed round, started entirely on Bubbles. They don't have engineers, and now they're scaling to the next level. And these kind of things happened at a time where everybody says that if you don't know how to code, you cannot basically you cannot have like a professional life without coding. And so we going against that and proving that it's actually wrong is something very rewarding to us.
Yeah. I love it. So here's some practical questions, getting through this questions from a lot of my students. And thank you, students, for sending me all your questions. I really appreciate this. I want to get you the information that you need, guys. So keep sending me your questions. It says, what was your mission at the onset? That was one of the questions that I really like to hear. What's the mission at the onset?
The mission of Bubble?
Mm-hmm.
The mission is really to make that anyone can build software easily, visually, without having to learn some specific engineering skills. Like, if you look at so far over history, like, using a computer has gone from like being a technical engineering specialist task to a generalist task. Like, everybody uses a computer at work and doesn't do a degree for that. We want to do the same thing with programming computers, which is something that hasn't happened yet. I think some people have tried in the past. I mean, we're not the first one to give our shot at this problem, but no one has succeeded because you basically still need to do CS in computer science or something to be qualified as an engineer. And we're trying to change this. That's really our mission. This matters a lot. I mean, this matters not just because some people want to start companies, but because more and more, if you look over the next 10 years, people that won't be able to use computers in a smart way, and using computers in a smart way really means programming them, will have a very hard time to find a job. And so that's why we need to change this. And I really personally think that the current mantra that a lot of people talk about, which is let's teach everyone how to code, which basically means let's make everyone an engineer and a specialist, is not the right way to do it, because code is not for everyone. It's boring. I code every day. It's pretty boring, actually. I'd much rather do that with a visual interface. What would be on this? And more importantly, I think some people are just going to be left out, and they will have a very hard time finding jobs. That's really the mission. So it starts, again, with empowering people to start companies, but this is really for us a way to prove our solution, make it work at scale. But eventually, I'm hoping everyone at work, instead of hearing from everyone, you should learn how to code, we'll just say, oh yeah, we don't need to code. I want to build software. Well, it's easy. It's like typing a Word document. Well, I'll go to Bubble.
Yeah, sure, and it's perfect, and I am super excited to get quite a few of my students who've been wanting to develop apps coming out of my class, or over the course of the class, developing their ideas and deciding that the tech app is the direction they want to go with it. This is a way for them to do that, and it's readily accessible for them. And there's a ton of other ways that I see the potential for Bubble to partner with what are students who really are in need of understanding technology without feeling like there's a barrier there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So employees, how many employees do you guys have right now?
So now we have 6 people in total, including the 2 founders.
Okay, great. And then what's your growth projection? This is my student, always interested in growth and always interested in that side of it. So I always know which students are asking certain questions. I can always tell based on.
So I'm pretty happy to share this thing. So looking about history, we had a pretty slow growth in terms of user base and revenue for the first 3 years because we were really working hard to get the product right. Building something like Bubble is challenging because our MVP, an MVP for Bubble means we have to enable people to build their own MVPs on Bubble, and that you cannot see it's built on Bubble. So you have to work fast, works great, have a lot of features. And that took us a lot of time, which is one of the reasons, by the way, why we didn't raise money, because we didn't feel like the VC, time frame would work well with what we were trying to achieve. So the first 3 years were pretty quiet in terms of growth, but the product was evolving pretty very quickly, and we had enough users to keep us engaged, which is important. Now, over the last 2 years, since our public launch, October 2015, we've been growing at 15% basically every month in revenue. So that actually got us pretty high today, where we can pay 6 people, hopefully 7 soon. We're looking for a new position, and all of that self-finance, just coming from proceeds from our sales. Now for the future, ideally I'd like to keep 15%, maybe more, maybe less. It's hard to tell. Our goal is definitely to stay in that range.
Yeah, that's great. And then how do you guys advertise your business?
So we've actually done extremely little so far. It's actually something we're changing right now, working more in communication. We've always partnered with schools. We did our pilot at Harvard Business School. And then we always, when we can, do presentations, when people invite us, actually this webinar right now, and that has been a pretty good place for us to get the word out. Then we did one major public launch on Product Hunt, this platform where startups launch their product, which went extraordinarily well.
I'm addicted to Product Hunt. It's the place I go to find an app that I absolutely don't need but must have.
Right, and so for us, we had more than, so if you're familiar, you will know that 3,000 votes is really high, and that's basically where we are right now. So that has been a very high growth. It's a community of early adopters, and we're always at the top of those rankings. When they do a ranking, build a website without code or something, we're basically always the first one, and that has been a very good driver. And then the sustainable engine, because Product Hunt is not something sustainable, is actually a search engine. People find us a lot on Google, and especially through our forum, actually. What's happening is that when you have a very active forum, like I was talking about 100 posts every day, that creates a ton of content that is very well indexed by Google because it's new content every day. And actually, what we see is that 90% or 85% of the traffic on our forum comes from Google or other search engines and not from our own websites. So our forum has become a great acquisition channel. It was not planned that way. I mean, initially, we just thought it would be a way to relieve us from customer support, having the community help each other. And it turned out to become an extremely interesting marketing asset.
That's great.
But now we're going to move a little bit into a more traditional communication as well, probably trying to do a little bit of press. We need to position ourselves as a leader of the no-code movement, because we are, in the sense that we started earlier. Now, a few more companies have started more recently, but we're the first ones of the new wave, because the previous attempts were more in the 90s. And so I want to make sure that we position ourselves as a pioneer there.
Yeah, great. So let's talk a second about culture. I always like to find out what that means. And we'll start with the base level of what do you look for in an employee in terms of matching a culture that you're trying to create or maintain or even just build?
Yeah, well, to be honest, we're more at the stage of building it right now, because we started hiring very recently. I think caring about care for the customer and the product is very important for what we do, because we're extremely important for our customers. In many ways, they depend on us very strongly. If we go down, their businesses go down, which is a very high pressure. And so we need to be very responsive when customers have issues. And that means, of course, for the customer support roles, but also means, for the engineers. Engineers needs to always have a care for, if there is a small bug that a customer is seeing on his app, it can be business threatening for them. And so you have to fix them very quickly. So that's probably the most important. It's really caring. So very strong attachment to the mission of the company and to the community of users. After that, obviously, you want people that are smart, work hard. We probably value more potential and I would say how smart they are versus experience, which is pretty common for a lot of startups, hiring like younger people, which can throw themselves on a mission like that. Bubble is a very long-term project. Like, we're not expecting an exit anytime soon. Like, my goal is that eventually everyone uses us, in the workplace when they have to build something. That's probably 10 years away. So we want people that are committed to that in the long term.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think of when it comes to things like social responsibility in relationship to your mission? Do you feel like you're making a societal impact?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you should ask our users. Our users are better to make those statements. Like, I always don't feel, I don't feel very comfortable making the statement myself. What I can say though is that we literally got like tens of emails from users where I quote, and I'm serious, like, you changed my life. And the reason for that is because they start businesses, and without us, they would, either be at a company where they would be bored, that would not be for them, or unemployed, or I don't know. We've got a ton of users, for instance, in the Midwest of the United States, like, in the central states, that run their entire business, that are not, they're not in TechCrunch. Like, it's not like, the kind of startups that are meant, to grow exponentially, like, startups in San Francisco or in New York, but they're actually like real sustainable businesses that use us, and they make a full-time living out of us. Right now, I'm estimating, because we have developed this entire network of people that provide Bubble services to other people, like agencies, or we have a marketplace where people can build plugins, for instance, and sell them. I think we have a little bit more, like 60 people that live full-time out of Bubble, which means we've already created an ecosystem. In many ways, we could argue we have 60 employees in some ways, like, it's not structured that way, but this is what it looks like. And this, plus the companies just that run on Bubble and that are able to exist, while they would not be able to exist because they don't have the same access to capital as people would have in major metropolitan areas like New York or San Francisco or Boston. That makes me feel pretty good when I go to sleep at night.
That's great. That's great. Have you ever turned down a client or had something absolutely crazy put up on your platform that you had to take care of?
I mean, not really. I mean, what we had in the early days is some people basically graduating from the platform, where, someone starts growing faster than we could product-wise, and so they decided to move off the platform and build their own things, which is fine. I mean, I still take this as a success story for myself. Like, I'm still very happy when that happens. Obviously, our goal is to keep everyone till they reach, a very massive scale. But this is something that takes time to build. We've been fortunate enough not to have like too bad, like nothing too bad that we had to make tough decisions on.
Good. I love to hear that. My nosy students, they love to know that kind of stuff. They want to know the gossip.
Yeah.
Always these kinds of personality questions are always great, because I think they give you an insight into the person that you're talking to and the type of person that you are, which is obviously an inspiration for other people. Running an organization like that is supporting other people and building a platform like this that actually gives people an opportunity to build something themselves and not have to wait for a tech expert to come along is so important. I mean, I cannot stress how important it is. So I want to know, what's your favorite book and or movie, and do you think it affects how you run your business?
It's a tough one. My favorite book, that might be like very French, but it's a French book, and it's a book that not many people know, so it's hard to tell. I mean, I'll be very quick on that story, but it's basically the story of someone writing about his father's life, and when his father died, and basically explaining all his life of his father and how his father was basically dreaming other people's dreams, like pursuing other people's dreams in some ways, and not actually, and realizing that toward the end of his life and being miserable because of that. Now, that certainly made me make the career choices I've made so far. Like, I've never really thought I was doing something that I really didn't truly want to do. After college, everybody was going to finance. For my generation, that was really the hot thing. Like in 2006, 2005, I decided instead to move to China. I was working in China for a few years just because I had very strong interest in that country. Then after HBS, well, you could argue starting a company at the time was a natural choices, but it actually wasn't. It really came 2 years later, after my MBA. And partnering with someone after the first coffee is really like, let's just go for what feels right. Like, it was not too much external pressure on that one. Now, how does that impact me when I run the company? it might be a little bit remote because I'm more talking about the personal impact on that book. But it's certainly, I certainly want to build an organization where no one is there because other people think it's cool, but because they really care about it.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I want to show folks just briefly what your site looks like, because I think that's a good place for us to also bring them, and that they understand kind of what it looks like, and how easy it is to use and things like that. So you'll see on the screen down below there, and now going full screen, that this is your website. And
which is not the editor, by the way. This is really
no, of course not. I just want to give people so when they go to the web page, they know they're in the right place. That's what I meant. Definitely. So this is that, and then the other part of it is you have great samples of some of the things that people have built here, which I wanted.
Including Bubble, by the way, like our own website, and not just the homepage, like our account management system, our documentation, like marketplace, everything is actually built on Bubble, as you can see here.
You
have to use your own tool, otherwise it's hard to use it right.
Yes, in Microsoft we call that dog fooding, because
that's exactly what it is.
And then there's some great examples of people who've actually built their sites. Are these still running on Bubble right now?
Yes.
Excellent.
Otherwise you wouldn't see them as a showcase.
Oh, excellent. So then this is an example here of where people can book time with professionals to get a close look at any career that they want, and it's called Careerly. This is just an example. I picked this one out because I hope it's particularly relevant to the students who might be watching this and other people who might be interested in connecting with a mentor. And then this one is music is always really interesting for folks. Ripple, which is you can build concerts anywhere.
It's a crowdfunding concert organization platform, basically.
Yeah. And talk me a little bit about this one and how it evolved.
So that one I think is a little bit less active, to be honest. They're still maintaining the site and it's still running. I don't think they've organized many concerts lately, but basically the idea was that instead, disrupt a little bit the concert organization space, where instead of going to a bar, you could be like, I have a big backyard in my in my house or something. Obviously, in New York, that will be a little bit tougher. It's more relevant for other places. And then you could say, okay, I'm organizing this concert. The band wants that much, and then people can contribute, and it works on a Kickstarter way, basically. So the concert happens if enough people just pledge enough money for it. So it's a fairly complicated website in terms of functionality. So that's a very good example of what Bubble can do, in the sense that the product itself, I mean, it's complicated to build it because you need to think of a lot of different cases, but it's not like a software project. It's not like building it is basically, if you write it with code, reinventing the wheel. You need to put together all those different actions and this kind of logic, but that's something that you can really do without being technical, just thinking very carefully of what the product should do. And that's actually very central to what we do. I mean, we think programming is about that. It's about, thinking carefully about what something does, which element you need on the page, what are the different actions, like step by step, that happens. But it's mostly about common sense and to think carefully about it, and not about putting your hand over keyboard and worry about the class name or the different variables and the scope of the programming language, which is, I think, very old school and should be kept for specialists.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point. And then I just want to end on one more question, I think, which is, how do you find inspiration?
Well, mostly from our users, I think, today, after 5 years. That's really like, well, we're very opinionated on the fact that we think the world should go that way, and especially when you start a company like that, which is a pretty big project where and we kind of knew at the beginning, which is, again, why we didn't raise money, that it would take a few years to get to a point where people would actually start caring. Because, if you go to people and just saying, oh, I'm gonna make programming easy, non-technical people don't really understand what that means until they see it. Technical people don't believe you until you show them. So you have to, your inspiration has to come from yourself at first. Now, after a few years, though, you might lose the fire a little bit, but then you have users that come in and you receive those emails, as I was saying, like, you changed my life. And then when you get that, that's probably now the greatest source of inspiration, because we actually know that It can be tough at time, by the way. Like the pressure can be high because if we go down, it's a high pressure on us, so we cannot go down. But that's a great source of inspiration. Like I am sure that what we do is useful, and we get validation every day from our users.
That's amazing. Emmanuel, I want to say thank you so much for coming on to the show with me today. Your words of inspiration certainly are spot on for a good number of my students who have been looking for some kind of technical solution to their app development process. And I think this is a perfect one for that. And I also think that if people want to check it out, you can always go by Bubble.is.
Yep.
And that's their website. So www.bubble.is. Fantastic place to go. Good luck. And I look forward to meeting you face to face one day real soon. We're both in New York City. We should see each other, right?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, we should.
All right, great, Emmanuel. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.